The Christian Institute has urged Ofsted not to enforce aggressive secularism under the cover of muscular liberalism. The warning follows a major speech by the watchdog's Chief Inspector, Amanda Spielman, who talked about religious groups perverting education and called on head teachers to tackle those who undermine British values. In comments reported on the front page of The Times, Spielman warned against listening to conservative voices in religion and cited the Christian Institute as an example. Simon Calvert, Deputy Director at the Christian Institute, joins us in the studio to discuss the story. Simon, what are your concerns for how Ofsted's inspectors may interpret Amanda Spielman's comments?
Well, our concern is that some inspectors might interpret this idea of muscular liberalism as meaning they have to enforce more secularism. Now, if Ofsted was able to enforce the great British tradition of liberalism, freedom to disagree, then that will be fine. But the concern is that people will take a much more narrow approach to it than that.
The Christian Institute has disagreed with Ofsted's approach to British values in the past. Could that be a factor in her comments?
Well, we have criticised the way some Ofsted inspectors have gone about their work in the past. For example, the infamous example of Vishnitz, the Orthodox Jewish school, where the inspectors tried to tell them that they had to promote transgenderism to 5-year-olds. A lot of people would think that was Ofsted inspectors being much too muscular. And then we also criticised them in cases where they have really rather unprofessionally been asking teachers and Christian teachers about their views on same-sex marriage. That's not their job. I mean, they need to know that just because somebody is religious and has socially conservative views, that does not mean they've got their first foot on the escalator to violent extremism.
Thank you, Simon. Anglican Mainstream and the Evangelical Alliance also criticised the Chief Inspector's remarks.
The Ofsted Inspectorate are confused. They're confused about the nature of Islamic fundamentalism, and they confuse it with being similar to standard Christian teaching on marriage and sexuality, which is what Christian Institute stands for. I think they're also confused about British values. They don't know what they are. They certainly include freedom of speech. And finally, they're confused about extremism. Extremism, for me, is a violent response involving physical harm to people. And to confuse that with and equate that with the work of Christian Institute in defending marriage and sexuality seems to me just illiterate.
Amanda Spielman talked about a liberalism that's strong enough to tolerate dissenting views. But then she goes on to criticise views that dissent from her own and are not violent in any way, shape or form, or even suggesting violence. And that doesn't seem like liberalism to me, so some clarity around this issue would be really helpful.